All right, so I'm sharing my screen now. You should all be able to see the alumni library slide here. If we haven't met yet, depending on when you graduated from Fielding, my name is Abby, so I'm the current reference and instruction librarian. I've been at Fielding for about 3 years. And today's brief webinar is really just meant to be an opportunity to get you acquainted with the alumni library if you haven't accessed it before. So we'll go through the basics of how to gain access, what's included in the library. Then I'll do a few refreshers on navigating just in case it's been a little while. And I want to also make sure I save some time so I can show you some open access resources and some other ways you might be able to supplement your library access to find full text materials. Feel free if you have any questions. There's a Q&A feature, which I'm a little new to, but I think I could figure out, or you're welcome if you have questions. I'll monitor the chat box, so feel free to put those in there and I'll try to look at it periodically. And I'll also pause for some questions at the end as well. So let me go ahead and jump in and just talk a little bit about how you gain access to the Alumni Library Collection if you haven't done that yet. So our Alumni Library Collection, there's a link to it from a space that's relatively new to Fielding called My Fielding. So depending on when you graduated, you might not have the login credentials you need to access that space. So if you haven't heard of My Fielding, if that doesn't sound familiar, you can get access credentials just by emailing our support team. I'm going to put their email in the chat box. I'll tell it to you as well. But it's just support@fielding.edu, and you can just send them a message and say, I'm an alum, I don't have any login credentials for My Fielding, and they can send you the credentials and the getting started information so you have all that access information to get onto the My Fielding site. And in the chat box, I've put support@fielding.edu is the email address you can use to get in touch with them. If you forget that, feel free to email the library. We'll make sure you get connected so you have the credentials you need. So once you do have that login information for My Fielding, I'll show you here. There's a Alumni Library Collection link right on the main page, so it's pretty easy to find. So this is what the My Fielding page looks like. If you draw your attention to the left side of the page where it says Quick Links, the first option in the list is Alumni Library Collection. So you just click on there and it's going to jump you out to the Alumni Collection. So the only real barrier there is getting those My Fielding credentials, and you should be all set to go. So you might notice, and I like to address this right away, it's a common question, that the Alumni Library has different databases than in the current student collection. The access levels are not identical. And we'll go through exactly what's in the alumni collection in just a minute here, but I know a lot of people, it's on their mind, why are the collections a little different? And the reason for that is just that the vendors, the publishers that make these databases, make them available with varying levels of access. So sometimes we can license them for current students. Sometimes we can license them for current students and alumni. There's just some variance in the licensing agreements, which is why you're going to see a different access level than you would have had as a current student. That said, I do just want to say this is something that is very much on the library staff's minds, and we are talking to Hillary and alumni relations. We're always trying to think of ways we can expand the alumni access and the content. So I don't want you to think that what you see now is all you're going to get. We're always looking at ways to provide more access. But those licensing agreements are really why you're going to see some disparities in what you had as a current student versus what you had as an alum. And let's go ahead and we'll jump back to the alumni collection page so you can see what you have access to. We'll talk about how to navigate that page, how to access materials there as well. Let me jump back over there. I'm going to take a quick peek at the chat box. Okay, I don't see any questions yet. Feel free to jump in if you have any. So in terms of what's really in the collection and how you navigate, you can access, we have a lot of journals, books, and dissertations available. And the way the page is set up, you might be familiar with this search interface. This was also available to current students. The top half of the page, so everything up here, except for where it says databases, those are all portals to help you access journals and books. So we'll go through some of them, but you can search for them by specific title if there's something you know you need and want to access, or there's some browsing options as well if you just want to discover what's available. The bottom half of the page, of course, is the heading suggests, is the databases list. There's a little over 20 databases available here, and this is where you'll see some difference with the current student collection in terms of number of databases. That said, there's some great content. I'm going to give a couple tips if you're not sure where to get started, some ideas of some of the broader databases that have interdisciplinary subjects so that you can really get the most out of using the alumni collection. So we'll go over all of that, but your general setup on these pages is journal and book content in the top half, database content down below. And so what I'd like to do, my main focus here today to get you oriented with the collection is really just talk about how you can navigate these resources, how you can take advantage of these tools to see if we have what you need access to, or just to use them to discover new content. So let's start by just talking about the journal and book content first, then we'll talk about the database content after that. So first of all, what you can do is if you know exactly what you need, you don't have to use any browse functions or search around forever. If you know the title of the journal you're looking for, you can use this very first search box on the page to check instantly to see if we have access to that specific publication. So to do that, just as you would have done as a current student, you just need to identify the format, journal or book. There's a handy drop-down menu so you can choose how you would like to search. Let me zoom on this page just a little in case it's hard to see there. I recommend searching using this title contains all words function. It's the most flexible. If you use title equals and you have a title that's long, that has punctuation in it, anything like that, it can be really unforgiving and finicky about punctuation. So if you use title contains all words, that's going to be your best option. And let's just say, for example, I'm looking for the Social Justice Research Journal. Now that I've chosen journals, I can plug in those words from the journal title, Social Justice Research, and search for any journals we have that have those words in the title. If you find a result, that's great. That means we have some level of access. If we didn't have any access, I would get a no results message. But here I can see Social Justice Research Journal. Something really great about this page that is very, very easy to overlook is that you can actually see the publication dates you have full text access to. So that'd be really great. You know, let's say you had a citation from 2005, you're trying to track down the article. If you look here below where it says peer review, it might be a little small on your screen. There's some dates listed. So here it says 1997 to present, and that's telling me the publication dates to which I have full text access. So that'd be great if I had a citation for an article from 2005. That's included here. I know I'd be able to get that article. And since it goes till present, I know that I can access the most current issue. I could see the online first articles. So if this is just a journal that I like to keep up with, I'd have that ability as well. So that's sort of the search function. If I actually want to get to the content of the journal, I just click on the name of the database it's associated with. So I'd click Springer right here under the title. And now I'll be taken out and I'll land on that journal's content through our subscriptions so that I have all the access that I need. And hopefully this is big enough here. So again, if I just wanted to read the journal, here I can see my online first options. I could just read the most current issue. What's great if you connect to an individual journal is they all have a feature to search within the journal. So if there's just a source you trust, you want to learn more about, you can search just within that journal for content related to a specific topic. So lots of great features if you just want to go journal by journal, which some cases you will. Sometimes you'll want something broader, and we'll cover that in just a second. But so that's the gist of how you might go about looking for a known item. So that'll work great if, like I said, if you have a citation, you're trying to figure out if you can get the article in the alumni library, or if there's just a journal that you enjoy reading and you want to keep current on and access the content. I'll just check the chat box quickly. I haven't seen any questions come in yet. Feel free if you have them. Okay. So the book search works almost the same way, so I won't belabor that too much. You can use it to search for known titles, or if you want to use the search function just to discover books available. Let's see, I see someone raise their hand here. Yes, did you have a question? Feel free, if you have a question, just set with your hand raised there, you can type it in the chat box. I'll watch that. Okay, Josette, I don't, oh, here it is. Okay, oh, you're saying you're online and you don't see the screens discussed. Did you log in through the My Fielding space? We'll have to see. If you log in through the My Fielding space and choose that Alumni Library option, that's how you would get into all of this content. If you're not seeing them, I can definitely troubleshoot with you a little more in depth after the webinar if you want to stay on the call after the recording, or feel free to email me and we can always Zoom one-on-one to make sure you're seeing what you need, whichever you prefer. But I'll definitely, as long as you're following the path going through My Fielding and choosing Alumni Library Collection, that should get you to the right spot, but I'll definitely troubleshoot with you further to make sure that you're connecting to what you need. Okay, so as I was saying, the book search functionality is going to be very similar. Searching for known items, of course, you'd use the same process. You can also sort of use this functionality to discover items. So let's say you just wanted to see all the books we have with coaching in the title. I could just type in coaching with title contains all words. And here I can see that there's 103 books that have the word coaching in the title. Then I could browse through those to see what matches my interests. But that's just as an example, another way you could see to navigate and use those resources. So that's searching for known titles. You're probably fairly familiar with that. I'll just go back on our collections page so you can see your other options. If you have a specific identifying number, so a lot of journal articles nowadays have DOI numbers, there's a search box where you can look for a specific article that way, so you don't have to take as long drilling down to what you need. And of course, there are some browse options. What's new, this is a recent addition, so you might not have seen this yet, is you can browse the journals and books by subject now. So instead of having to know a word in the title, you could choose a larger category from the list. Usually takes just a second to load, so I'll see if it is being agreeable right now for us. And if not, I will let it load and come back to it in a second. But what it's doing, okay, so you choose a larger subject like law, politics, and government. Now it'll bring up a list of subcategories. So I could scroll through and say, maybe I'm looking for something military related. Military administration. Once you select your subcategory, it's going to bring up all of the journals and books that match that category of interest, right? So here's the 223 journals and books that have to do with that. And I could, say journals only or books only, but browsing by category is a new feature, and it's going to be a nice way to see things based on subject, like I said, without having to know the exact words that are in the title of the journal or the book. Okay, let me just get back here to the search page. So of course, likely you will want to come to the Alumni Library to do some discovery searching. Oh, here, I see a question in the search box about that, searching by subject. Are there larger topic sets, or can we enter terms we know? That's a great question. In terms of browsing the journal and book titles, you have to use the subjects and the subcategories that they have labeled themselves. So you'd have to, work within the confines of the language that they've assigned to the subjects. When you come in and use the individual databases, those will be the places that you can actually do the discovery searching. So you can type in the search terms and discover articles that match those terms. So the browsing is within those confines of the language they've provided, and then in some of these databases, we'll do a sample search. That's where you could actually enter the terms to discover things based on your keywords or your subject terms that you've input. So hopefully that answers your question there. So in the databases, I will not read all the database titles to you, but I did want to mention, as I said at the beginning, the ones we have that really have the widest breadth of coverage, so that if you land on the database list and you're not quite sure where to begin searching, I want to give you some good ideas of where you might want to begin. So of course, there are a lot you can look through. You have a lot of options. The ones that are created by publishers tend to be the ones that have the broadest information available. So for example, I'm just scrolling down near the bottom here. This one called Sage Premier, it has hundreds of journals full text published by Sage, so a major publishing company. That's a great place to start. The other ones made by publishers, Springer, another one with tons of full text journals crossing multiple disciplines, and also Taylor and Francis. This is their social science and humanities library, so journals that fall sort of under the that purview. But all three of those, Sage, Springer, and Taylor and Francis, are going to be really great interdisciplinary choices. So if you're feeling overwhelmed by this list and you're not sure where to begin, those are often good bets because they have content spanning so many different subjects. So of course you're welcome to look through. There's much more than just that depending on your subject area of interest, but those are three to keep in mind if you're really trying to figure out where to begin. And so I thought what I would do a sample search in Sage like we were talking about, so you can see and get some reminders about if you're doing discovery, how you can enter search terms and sort of navigate databases in that regard. And I'll keep an eye on the chat box if you have any questions while we're doing the sample search. Please feel free to let me know. I'll go ahead and choose Sage since we just talked about that one. And I will let that load. All right, hopefully it will load here. I apologize. Sometimes on Zoom, my connection runs a little slow, but I think we're connecting. I'll get a couple going just in case one is running faster than the other. All right, there, Springer has loaded. Oh, here we go, Sage is loaded too. I apologize for that short delay. Let's see, a question came in while we were waiting for those to load, whether the Emerald group allows access to their database. So currently, I assume you're talking about like Emerald has like the Emerald Management 120 journal set, some business and management focused journals. Currently, it's not in the Alumni Library Collection. That and a few ProQuest journals that focused on business and management topics are on the list of ones we're talking about with Hillary. So we don't currently have access to Emerald's management collection. I'm glad you asked because that's one that's in my mind. So hopefully that or a comparable business and management focused database will be available soon, but it's not currently one that we have alumni level access to. Okay, hope that answers that question. I don't see any others yet. Okay, so when you land on the databases, this should look very familiar to doing research when you were a current student. The big thing I would say is if ever there's an advanced search option available to you, just as a little search refresher, I would always recommend using that because you'll have much better control over your search. And in some of these databases like Sage, where there's so much content from so many disciplines, it can be nice to get as particular as possible during your search. So I'm going to hop over here to the advanced page so that I can take some more control of my search. I'm going to use just an example about social media and activism for my sample search, but again, you could use obviously whatever search terms are most apt for your research. And hopefully this will load again. I apologize for this little bit of lag time. I'll just check on the chat box here while we're waiting a moment for that to load. Yes, I see some enthusiasm for acquiring Emerald and some of the ProQuest management related journals. So I completely agree with that enthusiasm, and I'll definitely carry that forward in the talks we're having about what we can do to supplement the alumni access. Okay, so here's Sage's advanced search portal. What I like, as I said, about using advanced search features, especially when you're doing content discovery, is you have more control. So for example, instead of searching anywhere in a document, which is likely going to bring back a lot of perhaps not so relevant results, you can use the advanced search page to limit to finding your terms in some more prominent part of the document, like in the title or the abstract. So for this example, I'll limit my terms to the abstract. So in my sample search, I'll look for the phrase social media. If you input things in quotes, that says you're looking for an exact phrase. And then I'm going to look for that term activism, as I mentioned. There might be more options here than you need. For example, I don't feel like I need to limit to a certain journal. I am going to choose to only view things published since 2010. It's a great way to just find more current research. And what I really like, and I think you'll find this helpful too as you research, is many databases in their advanced search pages, you can choose to only see content that you have instant access to. So if I only wanted to see the things that Fielding subscribes to, I could check this box. And then I don't have to worry about finding something that sounds great and realizing it's not part of our subscription collection. I like to leave it at all content just to know what's out there, but it's a really nice feature to be able to limit just to what you know you can access. So that's another benefit if you ever see the advanced option of checking there. Let me press search. I think I see a question in the chat box. Let's see, the question was if Wiley journals were included. No, unfortunately, Wiley is not one of the databases in our list here. Taylor and Francis will have some similar content, but obviously not exactly the same. If there are particular journals you're relying on from Wiley, sometimes that content can be available other places. So since we don't have Wiley, what I would do is if you know of specific journals, I would come back and use the journal search portal to check for those publications by name in case they're also indexed in one of the alumni databases that we do have access to. So that would be sort of the workaround I would use if we don't have Wiley, since we don't have Wiley, excuse me. Okay, so back on my Sage search, there's the search I built. I got 133 results. As long as I see this unlocked icon, I know I have access. The difference, the green ones are just subscription access and the blue ones are open access publications, but there, relatively quickly I was able to find a good number of matches for my search using one of these broader databases. And I'm sure you're pretty familiar with doing things like using refinements and sorting your results and everything. That was just a quick refresher for those who maybe are a little bit rusty using some of the database search interfaces. So what I'd like to do, just since we've done the brief recap of what's available in the alumni library, is I know since there's a lot of things you all want that aren't always there, we could talk a little bit about open access resource options and other ways you can supplement full text just before our time is up. Open access, if you're not particularly familiar, it's just a movement within publishing where people are trying to push for less barriers, fewer barriers to access. So instead of having to go through a paywall or a subscription login, having instant access to research. So there are a lot of resources out there that can help you discover open access materials. Many, many publishers now have at least branches of their publishing companies that are focused on open access. So for example, we don't have Wiley's entire database collection, but Wiley does have an open access collection of works that you would be able to get to. Most of the time, you could just Google something like Wiley Open Access, Sage Open Access, and each journal has a public open access website that you can search through. So that would be one way that you can discover some of those larger publishing entities' resources. I also want to show you where we have just a curated list of some open access options since there are so many. So I'm just going to return to the main alumni collection page. If you scroll down underneath databases, the very first line has a little note that suggests you use some of the library's LibGuides. And I wanted to point this out because we have an alumni LibGuide, and it walks through some of the access steps that I mentioned earlier, and it gives open access suggestions. So if you click on that LibGuides link, they're alphabetical. So here's Alumni Library Services. So there's different tabs, but the last one is this tab that has not only open access resources, but also some links out to open access data sets, which can be a real challenge to find. So I'd encourage you to explore. There's obviously a lot here. Some of the best resources here, just to do highlights, or there's a directory of open access journals. So a whole lot of content available there. Likewise, one of open access books. And you've probably heard of the Public Library of Science. They have many journals that are open access and still peer-reviewed. The content and directory of open access journals is also peer-reviewed. So those will be some good places to check and some ways to supplement access beyond just what's available in the subscriptions. And though it's not open access, I always like to point out that another great option for discovering content or trying to find the full text of something that you might not otherwise be able to access is to go through Google Scholar. Most of you are probably familiar with doing that, but what's nice in Google Scholar is if there's a known item, you can copy and paste the title in and quickly see if there's a PDF link associated with it. Or if I do my social media activism search here again, just to show you, often if you use Google Scholar as a discovery tool, you'll see PDF links over on the right-hand side associated with results. And that's just Google Scholar's way of trying to say, hey, it looks like there's a full text copy of this available somewhere on the web. This one I can see is on the author's website. Other times, you know, they post it to their institutional site. Sometimes just other websites have them. Other places like academia.edu, researchgate.net, some of those academic social networking sites, also great places to find PDF links. And if you don't see a PDF link available with a result in Google Scholar, or the one that is available doesn't work, if ever you see the all versions link, like right here it says 12 all versions, if you click on that, it will reveal other places where it thinks there's a copy of that document. So you can find other links to try beyond just the one that you initially see in the results list. So I would definitely encourage using those open access resources and Google Scholar and sites like researchgate.net as supplemental places to help you find full text. And of course, you're welcome to contact the library if you're trying to track something down. I always try to help because the publishing fees can be very exorbitant. So, you know, when in doubt, feel free to get in touch with me and I'm glad to help. Let me see here. I just see a question in the chat box about Google Scholar. I don't see it as a database option as it used to be for a student. So just to use open, yes. It's not in our databases list in the alumni library, but if you just go to the public-facing scholar.google.com site, you can still at least see all of the PDF links available. Exactly, yeah, just on their open site. So those are just some other ideas, hopefully, that are going to help supplement access. Again, as you're learning to navigate, like I said, I know there's some differences between the current student and alumni collections. I have long lists of places where I try to go track down copies of different things. So I'm always glad to help you on the hunt. Best way to get in touch is to use the library at fielding.edu website, just so whoever's working can get you the quickest response. But please don't hesitate to contact us. We're obviously more than happy to help you try to track down what you need. And I'm just going to, I know we're scheduled to end right about now, but I want to just make sure it was a very brief orientation. So if you've got other questions or things I can help you with, feel free. I'm going to keep my eye on the chat box. If you don't have any other questions, I really appreciate you participating. We've made a recording of the session, so that will become available shortly if you need any review information, or you can use that Alumni Library LibGuide for some tips again. All right, thank you guys. Okay, great. I'm glad to help. Were you able, were you able to get to the spot? I know you had some trouble connecting earlier. You're welcome. You're welcome, you guys. Okay, great. I'm glad you were able to connect. Any other questions or anything?